This guy's a veteran.
Are being taken away from us by our enemies in Washington, D.C. So are you angry? Were you angry to listen on the radio, as Nancy Pelosi says, that questions about the constitutionality of the health care legislation are not serious questions? Does that make anybody else angry or just me? It made me pretty angry. It also made me really angry when her and her entourage start walking into the Capitol building and she's carrying that huge gavel just to rub in every one of our faces. That made me pretty angry. It also makes me angry when my government decides that they're going to slide hate crimes legislation into a bill designed to fund the troops. It makes me really angry simply because what sense does it make to fund the troops to protect our freedoms and simultaneously take away our freedom of speech? It makes me really angry. The Tea Party movement, this patriotic uprising that's sweeping across America, is getting a whole lot bigger, because the more our government does, the more they get involved, the deeper their intrusiveness goes into our lives, the angrier Americans are getting. But you know, back in 1776, there was a group of people, they were pretty angry too. Back in 1776, our Continental Congress, they were living under the law of King George III. Anybody here ever heard of the divine right of kings? The divine right of kings is a theory of law that says that the people have no rights. The doctrine of the divine right of kings says that the people have no sovereignty. Only the king, only the government has sovereignty. Only the king and only the government decide who you worship, what you can say, whether or not you can have land or use it. That's a central government that's out of control. Well, back in 1776, Thomas Jefferson authored a letter that we call the Declaration of Independence. Now listen to this. Here's what it says, and then let me just kind of break it down a little bit. He said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. That among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." He said among these rights. He didn't list all the rights. He said among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes instructed to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. New government. What Thomas Jefferson is telling us here is that legitimate government has to meet two criteria. First of all, a legitimate government can only exist if and only if its actions are to protect the inherent rights of the individual. And secondly, a legitimate government can only do that, and a legitimate government can only do anything if and only if it has the consent of the people. That's the Declaration of Independence. And that's not really just the Declaration of Rights of Americans. That is the Declaration of Rights for all mankind. Freedoms, the principles of freedoms and liberty are being flaked away from our federal government with the aid, sometimes, of our state governments. State sovereignty is a pretty important issue in America. That's how federalism works. So the states can be a check on the federal government. Thomas Jefferson once said this. He said, this is what he said in 1776. Thomas Jefferson said, "The question is the same today as it has been throughout all history, whether or not man shall rule himself or allow himself to be ruled by a small elite." In America today, we have a small elite ruling over us. And they think that they can do whatever they want. They think that they can reach beyond the jurisdiction of their constitutional authority and do whatever they want. They really do, without any concern for you or me or our troops. And I'm saying this as a Marine. When they start playing politics, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit of my story. I had two of my buddies from my squad who were killed. And right about the time that they had died, we have a senator in America who's famous for saying, "I was for the war before I was against it." The questions that I have to ask is what kind of principles keep you guessing whether or not you're for war or against it. Meanwhile, overseas, my buddies are dying. It's because the principles of freedom, the principles of the Declaration of Independence, those principles of the Constitution have been sucked right out of Washington, D.C. by the culture of corruption. And these people, these politicians, a lot of them, not all of them, but an overwhelmingly vast majority, I'm convinced, believe that their only incentive to do anything is to secure themselves more power. To tax us more, to tax and tax and tax. But you know what? There's a state sovereignty, though. We got a lot of state candidates around here. And come November, you know, we got this flag. I'm going to kind of change direction here a little bit. We got this flag over here, the Gadsden flag. It says, "Don't tread on me." Prior to the Declaration of Independence, there was an awful lot of rattling going on, if you know what I'm saying. The American people were warning King George III. But on July 4, 1776, the rattling stopped and they struck. And they injected American venom right into the heart and soul of the British monarch and completely crippled them, and they grabbed that sovereignty and they took it to themselves so we could govern ourselves. In November, we've probably all been hearing it. It's been all over TV, radio. We've been talking about it at our kitchen tables, with our friends, with our neighbors. This November, the tide is going to turn, hopefully, by the grace of God. But here's the thing. The Tea Party movement, these other patriot movements, this is us. This is that snake rattling. This is the warning right here. This is a warning shot to government. And the Tea Party movement serves as a great warning. But you know what? We're not going to take our country back by painting signs. There's a whole lot more involved. We got to start striking. Carrying the signs is great. It serves to educate, motivate, and encourage. But until you make that call to the candidate you want to support and say, "Hey, send me a call list." Until you say, "Hey, send me a yard sign. Tell me what I can do for a good candidate to get them involved, somebody who's constitutionally minded and wants to bring this country back to the constitutional principles that we're supposed to have." That's how we strike. And right now, the snake is rattling. The American people, we are rattling, and we are firing off the warning shot, and we are saying, "Don't tread on me. You better not take one more step, because your day is coming, and it's going to be done real quick." Come November, when those elections come, find a candidate, find a state candidate, a state rep, state senator, whatever. Somebody who's got a backbone. That's what we need right now. Real leadership. Somebody who's willing to stand up. Hey, I was in the Marines for 10 years. I can tell you right now that it only takes one thing to be a leader. It only takes followers. So if you want to be a leader, all you got to do is just step out in front of everybody else. Get out of the comfort zone that we hear about all the time. Get out in front of everybody else and just say, "Follow me." That's all it takes. Find a state candidate. First of all, we got to do that. I heard a lady say last night at a fundraiser for a candidate over in St. Louis, she said, "We need to be the change that we hope for." How profound. We need to be the change. What we expect out of our leadership is what we need to be right now. And that's exactly what we're doing right now, because in the absence of leadership, people that normally aren't the leaders will rise to the occasion, which is why this platform has these two people right here, right now. Because they're filling a gap. But in November, it's all coming down to this. And you know what? November 3rd is going to be here, whether you're working or not. I guess the question that we have to ask ourselves is this. On November 3rd, are we going to have any regrets? Hey, it's up to us. It's an individual decision. We have enough freedom in America to still do that. You have to decide, are we going to have any regrets after November? This is it. This is our one shot. We can't miss our chance to blow it, because once it's done, it's done. Then we got to wait a whole other cycle. This Tea Party movement is about ready to filter right through an election cycle, and this is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to find out what we're made of. We're going to find out if this American venom has the kind of potency to cripple our government right back into their constitutional restraints. When you talk to your candidates, when you go out and you go go to work and you're trying to bring this country, save this country, not just take the country back for a party, but take this country and take it back to what our founding fathers wanted. When you go there, let's make sure that we know our Constitution, that we read it, that we understand it, that we understand the principles in there, and that we understand that the person that's being elected understands that they're being elected.